Ever wished your AI could, like, connect the dots instead of just spitting out facts? Really get the context of what you're asking.
It's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Right. And luckily, it seems like Anthropic's been listening because they just made a huge leap in that direction with this thing they're calling contextual retrieval. And we are diving deep.
We're talking moving beyond AI that just sees keywords.
Okay.
This is about AI that understands the nuance, the bigger picture, like we do.
Okay, so let's be honest. Asking your typical AI a question now, it's often a gamble.
Yeah.
You might get lucky, get what you need, but just as often it's like, did you even read the same document I did?
Right. Classic case of right words, wrong context.
Exactly.
And it all boils down to how AI currently handles information, how it's processing everything.
Okay, so walk me through it. What's happening behind the scenes that leads to these, like, AI facepalm moments?
So think Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or RAG for short.
Catchy.
Right. This has been kind of the go-to method for making AI seem, well, smarter, right? And it makes sense on the surface. You give the AI this massive chunk of data, like a whole library full of text, and it learns to pull out snippets that seem relevant to whatever you're asking.
Sounds like it should work. So where does it all go wrong?
The issue is that these traditional RAG systems, they tend to treat information like a giant jigsaw puzzle. But each piece, it's examined in isolation. They break down the text into these small chunks, analyze them without really fully grasping how those pieces actually fit together to form the complete picture.
So it's like trying to understand a joke by only hearing the punchline. Without the setup, you might get a few words, but you're missing the entire context that makes it funny.
Exactly, 100%. And that's precisely why you get those nonsensical AI responses. I mean, they might have technically used words from, the right document, but without that understanding of the overall context, the information they give you, it's often inaccurate or just, let's be honest, useless.
It's like asking, your AI assistant about some historical event, and instead of getting the full story, you just get, like, random dates and names thrown at you.
Precisely. And that is where Anthropic's contextual retrieval comes in. It's bringing context back into the equation.
Okay, so how do you teach AI to understand context? Like, we can't just hand it a dictionary of common sense, right?
Well, not exactly. Anthropic has developed some really ingenious techniques to bridge this gap. And one of them is called contextual embeddings.
Okay.
So imagine you're trying to understand a word. Let's say the word is bright.
Okay.
Bright can have all these different meanings depending on the context.
Yeah. Bright idea, bright light. Totally different.
Exactly. So instead of just saying bright equals this one generic definition, contextual embeddings take into account the surrounding words and sentences, right? And this allows the AI to grasp those subtle differences, the nuanced meaning of bright within that specific context.
So, like, giving AI the ability to, like, read between the lines, to understand not just what the words mean, but how that meaning, like, shifts depending on the situation.
Yes. And it goes even further. Anthropic combines these contextual embeddings with another powerful technique, and they call this one contextual BM25.
Contextual BM? What?
I know, it's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
But essentially what it does is it helps the AI zero in on the most relevant information. And it does that by actually considering the entire document as context.
So instead of pulling up every instance of, say, the word bright, it's actually prioritizing those instances that better align with, like, the overall topic, the meaning of the document.
You got it. This two-pronged approach of contextual embeddings and contextual BM25, it's a game changer. We're talking about giving AI a crash course in understanding the nuances of how we actually use language.
This all sounds incredibly promising. But I want to make sure we really get down to brass tacks here, right? How does this actually translate into a better experience for me, for the everyday user?
Yeah.
Why should we be excited about contextual retrieval? I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all been burned by AI that just doesn't quite get it,
Yeah.
So how does contextual retrieval actually change the game? Give me the aha moments.
Okay, well, imagine this. You're asking your AI assistant for help researching some really complex topic.
Okay.
And instead of just being, like, flooded with this jumble of vaguely related snippets, it can actually pinpoint the most relevant information from each, like, research paper it's looked at, right?
Yeah.
It's understanding the nuance of the arguments, and then, here's the key, presenting them in a way that's actually useful to you because it gets it.
Okay, so that's huge. That's like no more sifting through pages of search results, no more trying to like piece together a coherent narrative from all these scattered bits of information.
Exactly. And this is what's so exciting. The potential goes way beyond just research. Imagine like customer service chatbots that can actually understand your frustration and then give you genuinely helpful solutions instead of,
Yeah.
Or what about educational tools that adapt to how you learn best, your style, and then they provide these personalized explanations that actually make sense to you.
Okay, this is starting to sound less like AI and more like, well, genuine intelligence.
Right.
But Anthropic also mentioned this thing, prompt caching, being a key part of their approach.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Okay, so that's another thing that makes Anthropic's work really, really fascinating, because you see, teaching AI to understand context on the fly, like in the moment, it can be really computationally expensive. It's a lot of processing power.
Yeah, makes sense.
But with this prompt caching, what happens is the AI essentially remembers the context it's already learned,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
For a particular document or a topic. It's like it's keeping this running glossary of terms and concepts, but they're specific to your conversation.
So the next time you ask a question related to that same thing,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to start from scratch. It can like tap into its existing understanding.
exactly. Saves time, saves resources, makes the whole thing much more efficient.
That's brilliant. But I mean, it sounds like it's still early days, right?
It is.
There's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. And look, it's important to remember that even though contextual retrieval is this huge step forward, it isn't a magic bullet, right? I mean, the effectiveness, it still depends on a lot of factors, things like the size of those information chunks we were talking about, and the quality of the underlying language models themselves.
So there's still room for improvement and customization depending on the task at hand.
100%. And Anthropic knows this, right? They didn't just stop at contextual retrieval. They actually added another layer of refinement, and this one they call reranking, to make their system even more powerful.
Re-ranking. Okay, now that sounds really intriguing. So tell me more.
Okay, so picture this. Imagine the AI is having this like super efficient editor.
Okay, I like it.
Right. So it gathers all those potentially relevant chunks of information, but then the re-ranking model kind of swoops in and says, okay, these are good, but these are the absolute best ones to focus on.
So it's like a highlight reel of the most important and most relevant information. Does it actually make a noticeable difference?
Huge difference. In fact, their research showed that adding this re-ranking step reduced errors by a staggering 67%.
Wow.
But there's always a trade-off, right?
There's always a catch.
Yeah. While it's incredibly effective, re-ranking does add a little bit of overhead. We're talking about processing time and cost, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with these massive data sets. But those trade-offs, they might be well worth it depending on what you're trying to do.
It sounds like we're on the cusp of a real revolution in how we interact with information. I mean, we've gone from AI struggling to even understand a simple question to AI potentially grasping context with a level of sophistication that honestly rivals our own.
It's a really fascinating time to be working on this stuff. And the implications, well, they're far-reaching, to say the least.
Absolutely. If AI can now understand the nuances of context, what does that mean for the future? How will we learn? How will we research? How will we even create in a world where AI can connect those dots for us? Those are some really big questions worth thinking about. And that's something for all of you listening to mull over. This has been The Deep Dive, and until next time, stay curious.